So that was me. I'm Liz. Steve, Susan, I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves at all or just run with it.
I'm Rabbi Steve Nathan. I'm the director of Jewish Student Life and associate chaplain at Lehigh University, and I also do some service leading and teaching at Haskalah. So I know some of you, but not all of you.
I'm Susan Schaffer. I've got a disability, congenital, and I've had a disability programming all my life. I've done a lot of different things to encourage awareness and to reach out to people in understanding disability.
Awesome. So one of the reasons we're basically here today is JDAIM. February has been declared the Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. Yes, there is a bonus A in there. They squished it in. And to Susan, you want to take this part or
Oh,
start with your notes?
for
You want
Janayam?
Yeah, sure. Start with your notes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I really believe that communication is the key to understanding all things, including people with all kinds of challenges, whether it's physical disability or mental disability or um, racial challenges. I believe that the best way to work is together, but the best thing to do prior to working together is getting a little education and awareness of differences so that you see that the similarities are greater. So I really believe in this JDAIM program because then it's promoting what people should already understand, and that is disability or minority of any type is making society stronger. So that's why thank you for joining us. It should be a really interesting program. Okay.
Helps if I unmute. The JDAIM was founded in 2009 by the Jewish Special Education International Consortium with the goal of raising awareness and encouraging inclusion. Globally, around 10% of the world's population lives with some disability of some kind. I'm in there too. In the US, 20% of people have some disability, and 1 in 10 of those suffer from a severe disability. So the goals are raising awareness and commitment to the value that inclusion and belonging are essential to the well-being and quality of life for all people, including those with disabilities, physical or mental, and those who love them. Affirming the importance of choosing one's own Jewish journey. Supporting people with disabilities to help them participate in all aspects of a community life as they choose. It
Um,
goals are aiming to help people learn how to advocate for the civil rights of people with disabilities and mental health conditions, better understand and overcome stigma, biases, and stereotypes about disability and mental health conditions, uh, include disabled voices and perspectives in all decision making. Not about me without me.
Advocacy is really important. It's not just about fighting for your rights, but it could be your own personal issue that you don't feel you're comfortable with. It's really important to work with somebody else and then make your words and your views vocal in that pleasant way. People respect you.
In the United States, religious institutions are not required to adhere to the guidelines of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That means it is up to organizational leadership and members to ensure that spaces and services are acceptable.
Makes sense.
We have, Susan, do you want to introduce the values or you want me to do that?
Sure. We do both. I think there's a lot of parallels between disability and Judaism. And I've always thought that. And through the Jewish values and discussion of them, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm going to save one for later. So you could take it away. or now? And
Anyone feel like doing any reading? You do not have to attempt the Hebrew if you do not wish, but I feel you can hear more voices than just ours.
right. And then we have 5-minute discussion.
Yeah, and then we'll so framing wise, just think on what do you agree with here and what do you disagree with? What needs to change and what's perfect. So
I can
Rachel,
read it if you needed to.
thank you, dear.
Kavod, or respect. Judaism teaches us to treat ourselves and others with respect. Even the stranger is to be treated with respect. Kavod is a feeling of regard for the rights, dignity, feelings, wishes, and abilities of others. Teasing and name-calling, disrespect, and hurt. Teasing and name-calling, disrespect, and hurt everyone. So learning to respect other people's differences is important.
Awesome. And then our next one, Shalom Bayit. Does anyone else want to do a little read? So we have, let me get this in front here. Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. Our community centers, synagogues, youth groups, and camps are often our second homes. Everyone needs to feel comfortable, safe, and respected at home. Don't ostracize those who seem different. Strive to settle disagreement in ways that allow all community members to maintain their dignity.
People with disabilities often feel ostracized and are bullied, and that's why it's important to have this education for every level of the school. But start when you're young. Disability programs, when I did them in schools, somebody came in, I'll never forget. He was like a tough guy, and he was like, I'm not interested. I'm looking around, and he's just looking at the ceiling. All of a sudden, at the end, he asked the question, and I was like so excited and surprised. But you never know. Education on the top can really make a difference.
Mm-hmm. One of the next principles is Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh. It is the Jewish principle that all Israel is responsible for one another. It means that each of us must take action and inspire others to create a community in which we can all take pride.
And I would just add to that, I think it's really it's like Arivim really means like you're linked, we're linked with one another. And I think also obviously this is from the Talmud and it's focusing on the Jewish world, but we of course we expand it to our connections with the non-Jewish world and the non-Jewish world's connection with us. We are all, everybody today is connected in some way, but that remembering that this is a Jewish value. So especially within our communities, we have to remember our responsibility and our connection to each other.
We could almost rewrite that one, Rabbi Steve, as Kol Yisrael be-Yoshvei Tevel Aravim Ze Bezeh.
Yeah. So that we're responsible for all of Israel, all the Jewish people, as well as all who dwell on earth, and they are we're all responsible for one another. You're right, and there's always it's sort of within Jewish life, even within the Talmud, it's sort of concentric circles. You start with, family, and that's important too. I think, sometimes families also. I mean, I grew up with an older sister who is developmentally disabled, and, it affects the whole family structure, and you have to all be in it together. And then the concentric circles, family, community, Jewish community, greater community, they're all connected.
That's beautiful.
Rach, you want to take this one?
Yep. Shmirat halashon, guarding one's use of language, and avoiding lashon hara. The Talmud warns us that we must take care in how we use language. Talking about others behind their backs, even if what we're saying is true, is prohibited. The guidelines for Shmirat halashon remind us that what we say about others affects them in ways we can never predict. Words can hurt or words can heal, depending on how we use them.
so true. In the disability situation, a lot of people use words that are condescending. Sweetie, honey, they think that they're being respectful and they think, well, that's my normal way of speaking, but it can't possibly be. It's not the name on my birth certificate is not honey or sweetie. And I try to explain to everybody that talks to me and they apologize, but then they do it again. It's just habit, but it should be. I went to a conference called Your Words Are Image, and words are really powerful in how you feel about yourself and how the rest of the world feels about you.
And I think when Rachel also added the term lashon hara, which is evil speech, and not only does the Talmud say we have to be careful, but the Talmud says that lashon hara, that embarrassing someone in public is akin to murdering them. It's like it's halbashat panim, you whiten their face because the blood is drained out, and it's like murder, and so we have to be careful how we use our words. And also the other part of it is and realizing our intent may be good, but our impact may not be. And so to understand that and to we all have to learn and to teach one another.
Can I make you read this one, Steve? Because that's harder to pronounce.
Sure. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And this is literally the central commandment in the Torah. If you took a Torah scroll and spread it out, this is almost exactly in the middle of the Torah. You shall love your neighbor or your fellow human being, I prefer, as yourself. And commenting on this verse from Vayikra, from Leviticus 19:18, love your neighbor as yourself, Rabbi Hillel once stated, the first century, that this is the foundational value of the Torah. It begins with loving ourselves. We must love and accept our whole selves, and in doing so, create the capacity for extending that love and acceptance to others.
And you can't love others until you love yourself.
You want me to take this one too?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, Al tifrosh min hatzibor, solidarity. And this is really essential within Judaism and sort of goes back to the concentric circles I talked about before, starting with our own more often insular community, the Jewish community, but also it goes beyond that. Don't separate yourself from the community. When you feel different from others in your community, don't isolate yourself. Find allies and supporters you can talk to. If you know someone who is feeling isolated, reach out. Be an ally and a friend. So it's both those of us with disabilities, and I'm neuro, I'm not, what am I?
He
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent.
Yes, and I see it.
That's why
And it's easy to separate ourselves from the community, but then so we have to try not to do that, but also those who aren't disabled, though I would say lots of people have disabilities. We have to help one another.
Yeah.
Joey just put something in the chat.
Although I struggle with the adage, you can't love others until you love yourself. That can't. What if one is struggling with self-love because of a trauma history or some sort of bigotry that one experiences
Hmm.
consistently? Micro traumas are real, and microaggressions and that little chip, 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 chip away at you. I get that. But
Hmm.
I think it's with those concentric circles you mentioned, the smallest one is ourself.
Right. And you're right. Sometimes for some of us, if we wait until we love ourselves, we might be waiting a long time because we're working on it. So it's always a work in progress. So working on ourselves, but also working on our connection to the community and the community working on their connection to us, our connection to one another.
uh,
Somebody else just put something in the chat.
yeah, I have a story as well about what she said.
Hmm. Yeah, someone, let's see, what's the name here? Linnea was saying that their
Yeah.
experience of disability requires isolation, and that's the conundrum that they got no control over.
I lived that for years, and I want to make people help people believe that they can change themselves, and a little bit, just in some way, they can make a change. I understand if you're in a nursing home or your home and you're taken care of, and your disability is pretty involved, but there's got to be some way you can just reach out and make some kind of difference, because that's so important to feel that you matter. God thinks you matter, and you must think you matter. And I've
Mm.
lived that for years. Also, I went to with Shalom all my life, my childhood, and Mrs. Goldberg Youngstead. There were like queues in the first synagogue, and I had to sit out on the side, and I was either in the way of the Torah walking around, or I just, I couldn't go to the bathroom. And so it was really hard, and I did feel really isolated. But then Amos, I didn't really understand what it was like, how much it was like nice to sit in a circle and be part of the circle, because I never knew what it was like. So I never experienced it. Now I know at B'Shalom, the synagogue, you don't sit in a circle, but all the places we were in before that, we were in our circles. We had a big circle with the chairs around, and that made me feel so welcome.
Absolutely. And we definitely have at the end of this, hopefully, if we get time for it, just some of the concrete ways in which we can make very simple changes that have huge effects. Go ahead, Marcia.
Just wanted to say that sometimes those of us who don't have the disability often don't see the barrier. And I heard a wonderful story from Rabbi Seth, I can't remember his last name, who was at a congregation and met this man who was 65 years old. His birthday had never had an aliyah. Never had an aliyah because the Torah was up 3 steps, and the man
Mm.
couldn't manage those 3 steps. And it took some brilliant idea by someone to bring a table in and move the Torah down. And at
Hmm.
65, he had his first aliyah.
Oh, that's great.
So
And
just a wonderful. But most people would have never seen that barrier.
Oh, I would have
and I
been,
think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I would have been like, well, what does it matter? That's the reaction I would get sometimes when I wanted to include somebody with a disability who clearly is not being welcomed. Not in synagogue, but just in a different situation.
And I think, sort of piggybacking off of the story Marcia was telling, so I know there are different, some places can do more than others. Like I know at Bris Shalom, which we were talking about before, the Torah table is still up higher and it's hard to bring it down. But I know that they do, I know that Susan, you have had an aliyah, and it's not, holding up the Torah, and you coming up as close as you can to, in your wheelchair. It's still not totally there, but at least it's not, some places they would say, well, if you can't go and touch the Torah, then you can't have an aliyah. So then it would be totally, you'd totally be ostracized. And then I know the community I used to belong to, Germantown Jewish Center in Philadelphia. What they did is they removed all the fixed seating in the first half of the sanctuary, put in movable seating, and brought the Torah reading table down. So the services are all led on the same level as the people, and it's a raked floor, so it makes it a little bit easier. The only time the bima actually is used is when they still have to go upstairs to take Torahs out of the ark. Um, but otherwise, everything is down on the floor, and the chairs are in circle or three-sided around them and can be moved around. So there, and that took a lot of effort because they, like I said, they had to remove like hundreds of fixed seats.
Wow.
But so there are different levels of um, of accessibility, but there has to be
I think accessibility is like goes
themselves from the
hand in hand
community.
with
There has
like
to be some accessibility.
Sorry, we had a little glitch there with the.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Physical accessibility has kind of got to go with like mental, and you kind of feel like you're part of it.
Yeah. We have one last of the Jewish values. We saved this one for last because you guys, this is a big one for today. Susan, you want to do B'Tselem Elohim?
It's in God's image. The Torah tells us that we are all created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. This is a simple and profound idea that should guide our interactions with all people. If we see each person as created in the image of God, we can see humanity and dignity in all people. True inclusion is built upon this foundation. It's so powerful to me because I know so many people that are so impaired, and they're like, well, I can't do anything. What's the point? But, hopefully it would make a difference if they were told about this prayer, and that God has you the way you are for a reason. You're a strong person, and you believe that you can do a lot more than you give yourself credit for. There's just a lot of examples in my life of that being real. And later on in the program, I wanted to mention it as well, because we have a really good example through the Bible, through the Torah.
Yeah. Well, first you want to talk about Rabbi Julia Watts-Belser's book?
Sure. I read a lot of that, and it gave me some perspective, and I thought I would go through some of her disability wisdoms. I gave a lot of suggestions and strategies in other programs I've done, but this is a pretty comprehensive way, and it also includes the Judaism aspect, because I never did. Our lives are more complex than most. That is mostly true. I mean, everybody has a different level of disability. Some people walk with unsteady gait, so they have a cane. Some people can't even maneuver their wheelchair. They have to use a breathalyzer to use their mouths to move around. So some lives are more complex than others. But in general, it's also a good idea for everybody to think ahead. We have to, because otherwise we can't be spontaneous, because we have to rely on people sometimes that other people don't have to do. The world isn't set up for disabled. That sounds really negative, but it's actually true. I like to look at something and figure it out. I say pursue solutions, and most of the times they work. A lot of times, if you keep working at it, it gets easier. I don't have to give a lot of examples, but just getting into bed at first is like, oh my God, this is too high. But after the 8th time, it's easy, and you forget how hard it used to be. We may do things differently, not wrong. That's interesting, because as long as the goal is reached, the how doesn't matter. The how can get extremely complicated with all kinds of technological parts to it. But what matters the most is that you achieve your goal. It might take longer. Heaven knows it takes me longer sometimes. But I feel like if I do it for self, I'm happier in the end, and feel more independent. We may do things differently, not wrong, yeah. So nothing is wrong. Everything has a different way of doing things. We may need more tools, wheelchairs, canes. Disability is a broad category. Not all are visible. 5 minutes ago, before I got on this program, somebody wrote me that there was this great article about hidden disabilities, and I was surprised, because I knew I was going to talk about how hidden disabilities could be more disabled than people who have physical disabilities, because people are really judgmental, and especially if you're walking, they don't see that you have a heart condition, or that you have seizure disorders, So a lot of times it's harder to have a hidden disability. I think physical disability has been a lot easier since the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, where physical disability was really enhanced ramps and elevators. But that's very important that people have to be respected and believed. We don't need to be fixed or prayed over. I never heard anybody else believe that or say that, but Rabbi Julia said just what was always on my mind. I hate when people do that. I should respect that they're willing to, do a positive thing, but it makes me feel like a pity party. And also when someone asks you what is wrong with you, that's pretty blunt, but it's also something that they expect a medical reaction, a response for you from and a diagnosis. That's what she says. But we, the people with disabilities, should rephrase it and think of how we can add to Judaism. Just awareness is one thing we can add. It doesn't cost money and doesn't involve medical fixing. We just have to be happy with who we are and the way we are, but also thrive to do better.
Okay. Another this is another concept that Rabbi Belzer brings up in Loving Our Own Bones, and it's the God on Wheels concept. Because we're made B'Tselem Elohim, we're made in God's image. If we're disabled, is there not disability within God? So they have, let me move this over here. Okay, so God on Wheels is divine mirroring. It's a fully embodied God who reflects the lived experience of a disabled body, affirming that God knows and shares the intricacies of disabled lives. There's an intentional dependence. As many people rely on assistive devices and other items, God also chooses a form of intentional dependence on human hands to do actions within the world. And then also this kind of subverting the cure. This vision rejects the idea that a body must be healed or fixed to be sacred. Instead, it positions disability as a source of sacred wisdom, which I love that
And
bit.
and I would sort of add to this, I always like to say that yes, we are created in God's image, but midrash and commentaries and things like that are about creating God in our image, is the way I look at it. And so if so there's something of me within God. And even thinking um about God on wheels. I mean, if you look at Ezekiel's vision of God, that's the divine chariot. God's on a chariot, which is like a wheelchair, right? It's a similar. So there's, that image can be used but I think also we can all find ways to see ourselves and our abilities and disabilities within the divine.
Can I go back to say Elohim for a minute?
There you go.
Okay, with say Elohim, God is believe everybody's equal and everybody matters. And the example I want to give is when he chooses Moses to lead the people to the promised land. Moses stuttered. He had a pretty bad speech disorder. So he said, quotes, this is not a job for me, this is not a job for me. I have, quotes, twisted tongue, and the people won't listen to me. Well, God listened to him, and he also decided he still was the person. He was not going to change his mind about Moses being wise enough to lead the people. However, he suggested Aaron would be the mouthpiece. And so it would still be Moses's task, but it would be carried out after Aaron made the words clear. So that's God giving person with limitations a task and not changing his mind and believing in the person.
Right. And I always see that as, Aaron was the first interpreter. Um, and just because someone has difficulty speaking or can't hear, doesn't mean they can't be a powerful, have a powerful, meaningful life. I mean, we all know examples of that, and the fact that in so many places now there are interpreters for those who are hard of hearing or deaf. And so I think we do see these images that sort of mirror that in the Torah and within the other places in the tradition as well.
But there's a lot of other biblical individuals with challenges that still were very well known and respected.
Right. And I'm going to look at some of the actual texts in a few minutes that these actually come from, because I think, but where does it all come from? Thank you, Liz. I was just going to ask that question myself. But one thing before we go there, I do want to say about the invisible disabilities is also really important. Like I said, as somebody who's neurodivergent, ADHD, and, number one, people don't necessarily see it. Number two, sometimes people think I'm making excuses, that it's not, or people think it's not a real thing. It's something that's overdiagnosed. And there's a degree of truth to that, but a small degree. Um, and so, people don't see that. And my sister, who I spoke about earlier, who was born in 1948 and was diagnosed in the early 50s as what we would call developmentally disabled now. Back then, it was high educable mentally retarded was the term that was used then. So, but looking at her, and still today, I mean, you can't tell by looking at her that she has a disability. Even having a conversation with her to a certain point, you can't tell. I mean, she worked for the state for 40 years and she's had a life and she has friends who are not disabled in any way. And yeah, sure, if you get into certain complex conversations and concepts, she can't get that. But, otherwise you don't. And my parents always said that what helped the most was when they went to a psychiatrist. And again, this was in the early mid 50s where there was no real special education and any of that kind of stuff. The psychiatrist said, the best thing to do is just treat her the same way you would treat any child. Don't treat her any differently. Yes, realize that there's some limitations, and we get to those limitations, you deal with it. But otherwise, just treat her like you would anyone. And that's really been the key to, I think, her being able at the age of, I forget, 76 to, 77, whatever, to live on her own. And she's been living on her own for years and she's very self-sufficient. And, I think but again, that's sort of one of those invisible disabilities.
But
My
then,
parents, Rabbi Steve, definitely had the same kind of experience going to a therapist and with my learning disability and worrying about treating each child the same. And the psychiatrist said the same is not always equal. You take
Right.
your one daughter to violin lessons and dance classes. You take your other daughter to tutoring for her learning disability, and it's perfectly the same. It's just not equal.
Right. It's equity, not equality.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah, I was just
You
thinking.
give the person what they need.
I would also just like to add, we talk about visible and invisible disabilities, but then there's also dynamic disabilities. And I know like what I experience is sometimes I need a mobility aid and sometimes I don't. So like sometimes I use a cane, sometimes I don't. And sometimes I need a wheelchair, sometimes I don't. And it depends on my symptoms for the day. It also depends on the activity. Like if I know that I'm going to have like a longer day, it's in my best interest to just start my day with my cane so I can last longer. And I think that, what's hard is, and I'll say like in my experience, I deal with this at my job of I get a lot of people, oh, you must be feeling better. And like, oh, you must be okay today. And
Mhm.
or if they see me not using my cane, they think that I could still do all the things, like I could do all things, and I can't. And
Mhm.
so there is that, if you're using a mobility aid sometimes and not all the time, my
Yeah.
experience is like people just don't understand, or, but with that being said, I have a friend who has two little girls, and they're 6 and 8 now, and for their entire life they've known me as, like Auntie Deb, who sometimes uses a cane, sometimes doesn't. And they ask all of the questions, all of the questions. And I love that they ask the questions. And I feel like, these two little girls, they understand completely because it's just been so ingrained in them since they were born, or like they know that like I can't always go up the stairs and tuck them in if I'm over and I'm spending time with them, or if we're going to do an activity, it means that they need to come up on the couch. But it's like, when does that education, when do we teach that piece of education, of
Mhm.
how everyone can contribute, but maybe, they might, not look like you, or they, might not have all, one person might use a cane or in a wheelchair. It's, when do we educate so that there is this, more acceptance in the world?
Absolutely. It's something that right now is dependent on exposure. If you've got a cousin,
Exactly.
a friend, a neighbor, okay, I understand. For instance, I became very close friends with someone who uses a chair 100% of the time. And just through the exposure of being places with him, going back and forth, I've learned, oh, that's why that guy parked that way,
Hmm.
because he needs the extra ramp space.
Hmm.
That's why this door is placed here and that's not there. So it's these little things that just, even though I've been dealing with invisible disabilities, because on a good day, you can't tell nothing.
Yeah.
I've been yelled out my car window.
Yeah.
You don't belong parking there. When I use my handicap permit, the twice a year, 5 times a year I use it,
Yeah.
it's when bad days happen, good days happen too. And people aren't necessarily used to integrating those in the same person and realizing, say you have fibromyalgia, lupus, something like that. It is there every day.
Mhm.
It is there
Well,
every day.
it's every day. And then like people also don't realize that, if you have a invisible disability, how much spoons, how much energy you're using up. But then it's gonna like completely like knock you out, and then you can't do anything for days afterwards. And so sometimes it's like this give and pull, and you have to then decide, is this activity worth it? Or is this how I'm going to spend my energy? Or am I going to do this when I know that this will be the end result? And it's like almost like a constant battle that you have to do with yourself, deciding what even gets done in your day. Am I going to do laundry, or am I going to wash the dishes?
Yeah. It's I have a sticker on my laptop. No spoons left, only knives.
I
Oh
Oh,
my
I need
gosh.
that. I need that.
The
So why don't we go on to you want to go on
Yes,
to the next
absolutely.
next slide?
Steve, Susan put a question in the chat for you. You decide when to bring it in.
Yeah, yeah, and I responded that I'm going to be so. Yep. So I think we have to look. So remember, we're starting out from the place of B'Tselem Elohim, that we are all created in God's image, and so we are all equal. And yet, again, that doesn't mean we are all the same. And so we have the story here, and I'm not going. We don't have to read the entire thing, but again, we have Isaac is old and his eyes were dim. He couldn't see, he couldn't see well anymore. And so this is the whole story of he sends Esau out to hunt and bring back food to make stew for him or prepare a dish. And then so Esau goes out, and then next slide. Rebecca, okay, so we have really messed up family dynamics here, but we're not gonna get into that part. She tells her favorite son, Jacob, to masquerade as Esau, by putting animal skin on his fur on his arms because Esau's hairy. So make a dish like your father wants. So you'll get the blessing from your father. And then next slide. So right. So Jacob says, but I'm not the same. So it's the whole story of basically this whole thing happens. And again, Jacob gets the blessing and the birthright because Isaac can't see. So we see here somebody actually taking advantage of a disability, and in a in a negative way. Again, we'll just leave the family dynamics of mother, father, sons out of this right now. But so then it's we have to be careful, not to take advantage of people when they have disabilities. Isaac was still the patriarch. Isaac still had the power, but then he's tricked because of his disability, which has come from, it's not a disability he had his entire life, right? It happened because he's elderly. So that's another thing to remember, that being elderly is not a disability, as somebody who just turned 65. But being elderly can bring, the older you get, disabilities, you may develop disabilities, your eyesight, your hearing. And so we have to be conscious of that and accepting of that and accommodating of that, but not taking advantage of it in this way. Um, let's go to the next slide. Oh, okay, this is still we can keep it. This is a long story. So, but I think, okay, so, um, any questions about that or any thoughts about it before we go on to the next one? It's a story that I think most of us are probably familiar with, but
I just wanted to add the one thing, like you had said, that disability, el- being of advanced age is not necessarily in and of itself a disability, but
right.
disability is the one minority class that you can enter at any time in your life
Yes,
at any moment.
exactly. Exactly. Um, so here in Genesis 32, Jacob and Esau had separated, and now Jacob is about to reunite with Esau after 30 years of not seeing each other after the whole incident of tricking their father. And so he's left alone. He's sent everybody away, and he's left alone wondering what's going to happen. And a figure wrestled with him. Some say it was an angel. It just says a man. So we don't know exactly, but and they wrestle all night, and he wrenches Jacob's hip at its socket at the end, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him, and so Jacob limped for the rest of his life. So he developed again that's an example of a disability that, sometimes it happens because you get older or because whatever, or genetics, and other times it's because of something that happens to you. You're in an accident, or you fall and it never totally heals. So that's again the idea of, that disabilities can, as Liz just said, can happen at any time. But the thing to remember is even with the disability, Jacob is the father of the 12 tribes, and he becomes Israel that night, actually. After he struggles, he says to did I include this? I don't remember. Yeah. So, he says to the angel, "I'll let you go if you bless me." And the angel says, "All right, your name is now, I bless you, and your name is now Yisrael, the one who has struggled with the divine." So I think this idea also that his struggle, which left him injured and disabled, is actually part of what made him who he was, what made him the patriarch and the father of the 12 tribes. So you can also find, sometimes you can find um, positive things that come from a disability, and other times you can't. uh, but and any thoughts about this or questions? Okay. Um, this is what Susan referred to earlier. Um, that when Moses is called upon by God and he says, "I'm slow of tongue, I can't really talk very well." And I love this. And God said to him, "Who gives humans speech? Who makes them, I hate the word mute, I'm sorry, mute or deaf? Who makes them unable to speak or unable to hear, not being seeing or blind? Is it not I, God? Now go and I will be with you as you speak and will instruct you what to say." But he said, "Please, O Lord, O God, make someone else your agent." And that's when God says, "Okay, Aaron can be your agent, can be your interpreter." But I think this, you know, we could get into the whole issue of theology and does God cause things to happen. But I think the essence of this, even if you don't believe that, and I don't personally, is that the divine is in everything, whether we can see or we can hear or we can walk. Um, God is there with us, and we are in God's image. Going back to that again, and so I think that's a really important line there. He reminds, Moses, "Listen, I'm the one who's behind all this. I'm there, but I'll give you the accommodation that you need
Right.
in order to serve me." And that's how Aaron becomes the interpreter.
Yeah.
Um, right. So I basically we can go through this. That's the rest of that story. Okay. But any thoughts about that before we go on to the Leviticus quotes? Okay, I really wanted to focus on this idea though that God was in the disability, you know, which sort of goes back to some of the stuff that Rabbi Belzer was saying that everything is the divine, and so however you choose to view God.
Yeah.
All right, but we have, and now Leviticus is really interesting because in the holiness codes, and it's all about how we treat one another. So first it says, "You shall, um, the knot is missing here.
Yes, the
You
knot is
shall not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind. You shall fear your God. I am the Eternal." So that one word is missing there. It's one
yeah.
little word can make a difference. But I think that is used in so many ways by the rabbis later on that you should not intentionally put a barrier in front of someone if they are deaf or if they're blind, but also and it does get expanded into lots of different things that we should remove barrier. We shouldn't put barriers there, and if they are there, we have to try and remove them. Um, but two chapters later, when God is giving the orders about how the sacrifices are to take place and how the priests are to do the sacrifice, it says, "No man of your offspring throughout the ages who has a defect shall be qualified to offer the food of his God. No one at all who has a defect shall be qualified. No man who is blind or lame, unable to walk, or has a limb too short or too long. No man who has a broken leg or a broken arm." And it continues. Um, and so there's that's the other side. And I think, again, we're dealing with a couple thousand years ago. Um, and the animals also had to be perfect. There couldn't be any blemish on the animals. So there was this sense of of perfection being akin to holiness and the holiness of making sacrifices. So this is, it's not, this is, it, this reminds us that, yeah, it's not perfect. There were also that was putting a stumbling block in front of the people, actually, by saying, sorry, even if you were born into the priestly tribe, you can't do your job because you have some kind of a disability. And so we have to try our best not to do that, and not to make assumptions that somebody can't do something because of their disability. But also sometimes, and speaking for myself, sometimes to realize that help people to understand maybe this is something that you can't do, but you can do something else. Maybe you can't do the sacrifices, but maybe you could help out in another way in the temple, right? So maybe you can't do whatever it is, but there is always something that, um, again, going back to what Rachel was saying, is not necessarily equal. It's not necessarily the same, but there can be equity there. Um, and then finally, this is jumping ahead a few centuries to Jeremiah during the time of the exile, and he's talking about bringing the people back to the land from exile. And he says specifically about God, again, this is God speaking, Jeremiah speaking, God's words. I will bring them in from the northland, gather them from the ends of the earth, the blind and those who are unable to walk, usually translated as lame, among them. Those with child, those in labor, in a vast throng, they shall return here. So that when we come back home to the land, it's very important. Jeremiah makes it very clear that everybody's part of this. Nobody should be left out. And then remembering that you're not supposed to put a stumbling block in front of people who have disabilities. So that means, okay, we need to, they need to be part of this, and we need to help them if they do need accommodations. And this just made me think of a time when that doesn't happen, which I didn't put in here. But there's the story of Amalek in the Torah, where Amalek is seen as sort of the ultimate enemy of the Jewish people. Haman of Purim fame is a descendant of Amalek. And what made Amalek so terrible, according to the Torah, is that they attacked the elderly and those who were straggling behind. But the reason, yes, they attacked the weakest members of the community, but the reason they were able to do that was because they were being left behind by the others. So we really have to remember that we all have to be in this together, and we all have to support each other to make sure that doesn't happen. It's not only up to the people with disabilities to make the world a better place for them, but it's up to all of us to make those who aren't to also make sure that we're helping them in whatever way possible.
Rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so now we
Any
were
questions about any of those biblical texts or my comments on them?
I was referring to the priests, that if they have blemishes, they can't do the job, they're not allowed to. But I don't.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was as I said, that was important, but I think to remember that, okay, maybe there's something that you can't do, but there's something else that you can do. So you can still have a role.
Okay.
looking at what do we do with this? We've got the knowledge, we have the values, we have the principles behind it. So what steps are we going to take today? And I went through, and basically individual behavior sets the tone for a welcoming community. So it's the people at the door, it's the people sitting next to you, it's everyone who's right there. Susan, you want to take any of these, or you want me to just run through?
Sure. I'll say so. I certainly
Go ahead.
invite them to sit at your table at Oneg. That's my explanation as to when I get to worship and talk to people about accessibility, the first thing they say is we have a ramp, we have an elevator, our bathroom is larger, we have a handicap spot in the parking lot, and then they'll have larger print books. And the next thing I ask is, well, do you invite people to your table? Invite people to meetings and let them join in events. Heaven knows we needed more people in charge of different events. It's always the same people. And even if you think their disability may exclude them, invite them anyway, and you might be surprised that there's a lot more to them that they can do. There's always more a person that they can do than they can't. They can decide what fits for them. Let them decide, and I'm sure they'll find something. I would go to I went to a Mayfair and some other events, and I didn't really have a lot I could do. So I took my reacher and took out some of the trash. I find it all over the ground, and nobody thought of that. Accessible seating. Rearrange seating to accommodate wheelchairs and ensure aisles are wide and clear. Yeah, I've been told that fire hazard. That's not very nice. Inclusive language is crucial. That's what I mentioned. Instead of simply telling folks to rise, include language for folks who may need to show reverence differently, such as rise in body or in spirit, rise up and root down. The other thing is I'm really, really simple, and I don't like to worry. I don't like the person worrying about hurting someone's feelings, and therefore they don't talk to them at all because they're tripping over their words and they're nervous, and just talk to the person, take the initiative, and hopefully they'll smile back if you smile, and then the conversation will go on. We'll start, but they need to start the conversation and not be nervous about talking to the other person. Quiet space. Design. Designate a quiet area for those who may need to leave an event for sensory or emotional breaks. Thinking ahead and knowing if you have to leave, you sit in the back. Or that there's a way to get out without having people move.
And I think just to add to that a little bit, I think the last one about oh, we on to do thanks. The quiet space, like I know I need that sometimes myself, and a lot of people do. And every year when I go to the Hillel International Staff Convention, they always have a quiet room, a sensory room for those who need a break. It's not just a room that they like say, okay, you can go in there, but they make it a welcoming space for them, which I think is really wonderful. And the seating, as I talked about before, but also something that I just thought of, Susan, and this reminds me of something you said earlier when you said, people might refer to you as sweetie because they're sort of looking down on you because as being in a wheelchair. The other thing is also making sure you meet people on their level. Like if I'm talking to you, Susan, I shouldn't be standing looking down at you. We should be able to be eye to eye, so I should sit down as well. And I think whenever that's possible, to try and meet people on the level, not only intellectually, emotionally, but physically, to meet people where they are. Because imagine, it's sort of that same idea of infantilize someone by calling them sweetie or dear or whatever. It's the same thing. You can have that same effect if you're standing and the person you're talking to is sitting in a wheelchair or sitting in a regular chair but can't get up.
I will say I do think that there is a caveat to that though, because and I'll be completely transparent. I mean, like I have multiple disabilities, but like one of them is, like I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, but then I also have Ehlers-Danlos. And so I go through this weird thing where, sometimes I get to a point and it's too painful for me to sit. And so then I do need to stand.
Right.
So, it's not uncommon for me. I could be sitting and, talking to friends, and then I'll say, I'm sorry, I need to stand And
Right.
and then I'll say, but like, please, don't feel the need to stand up. But so I do
Right.
think it's like also that understanding of, you could have multiple people who have different needs
Mm-hmm.
that are communicating with each other. And so
Yeah.
just being, respectful of that, of sometimes people are doing things for their own reasons and not,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Oh my God.
So it's about meeting people where they are as best as you can, and that
yeah,
might change. And I have a daughter who also has POTS and Ehlers-Danlos, so I know what I have a little idea of what you're
yeah,
talking about.
Oh, I kind of look at it as a power thing. They don't get a lot of money for their job, so they're better than you. They want to separate themselves from you because, oh, I would never be in a wheelchair. I would never do that. And, but in the heart, some people think it's contagious, a disability contagious, and so they do things and say things to
Hmm.
make sure that they keep the barrier between you and them.
and I think also too, like, like in general, people tend to want to socialize with others who they feel like they look like, or like
Hmm.
they can relate to. But and it's usually based on like a surface first impression. And
Right.
so it's also, how do you change the mindset of getting past what that surface
Hmm.
impression is.
I have a thing. I've always noticed that people who have a multiple disabilities, chronic pain, are dealing with disabilities. We find each other very quickly and bond like that because I know what you're talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And it's that just meeting each other. Oh, you see my pain, you see my struggle. Okay, then we're operating with the same vocabulary, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, don't not to forget that there are folks with disabilities that include face blindness, and part of the reason why they might use a generic form of greeting might be because they aren't 100% sure they know who you are yet.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the next couple are just, these are not in any particular order, but listen and learn. Actively listen to the needs of people with disabilities and try to avoid making assumptions. Training can be very simple. Just educating everyone who might be an usher or everyone you can. Show them how to warmly welcome and assist people with disabilities with respect. Um, Respectful language, for the most part, you want to always try and prioritize person first language, unless that individual just expresses a different preference, like an identity first language that's really common in autistic or deaf communities. But just like with pronouns, you listen to what the person says because they know themselves best. So, however they
Yeah.
feel like they should be described. Um, a couple more. Ask, don't assume. Before you offer help, ask if it's actually needed and follow their
Mm.
actual instructions. Don't just grab someone's chair. Respect mobility aids. Treat wheelchairs, walkers, and canes as personal space. I say treat them as an extension of that person's body. Never
Right.
touch or move them without explicit permission. And always assume that a disabled person has agency and knows what they need.
Yeah.
Um, the trick is all of that works one on one, but to get a truly more inclusive environment in Jewish institutions, it takes both the immediate personal actions and
Mm.
long term organizational shifts. These are a couple of things that institutions can do. I'll go through them a little faster because I don't know if anybody is necessarily as interested in these, but use technology. You should never hear the phrase, "Do I need the microphone?" You always need the
Yes. Always use the
microphone.
microphone. Because then
Always.
you're putting people in the people who do have hearing disabilities. They have to sort of out themselves or have to make it, maybe that's not the right term, but it should just be, yes, using the microphone. Then you're not asking somebody, oh,
Mhm.
do I need it? Because a lot of times people will be embarrassed and not say that they need it, and they won't hear what you're saying.
Absolutely. Um, One thing we've been trying to really do at Haskalah is we have hybrid and streaming options for everything, except
Right.
for Toshly in the park because there's no Wi-Fi by the stream. It's all online. Part of it is we realized just how much barriers were washed away by online access and have stuck with it. And as a community, 4 months into pandemic, decided we would continue streaming ad infinitum because of how many barriers are washed away, basically. So we also try and be really good with food safety and transparency. There's always something gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, etc. Have varieties and label them. Enhanced sensory access, large print or braille sitarim, fidget toys, quiet rooms, proactive participation, specifically invite people that are disabilities to be taking active roles in Devar Torah, Kiddush, etc. Follow the nothing about us without us. Have people on your boards in leadership roles. Improve physical signage. Mark accessible entrances, restrooms, elevators, etc. Lower ritual objects. Make it so everyone can reach the kippot. Everyone can reach the tzedakah box. Everyone can reach the mezuzah. Put information out in more than one format. Audio, captions. I actually am not even positive if captions got turned on today, so if they weren't on, that is on me. Braille, large print, etc. Put your physical improvements in. Hire architects that use universal design standards that go beyond ADA and involve people with disabilities as consultants to say, that's the problem here. This is the problem there.
Hmm.
And I guess if anybody has any comments or questions, or is there any changes you've seen that were really good that you think should be replicated elsewhere? Or are there any?
We added having chairs that are not just seating chairs, but armchairs for folks who
Yeah.
need accessibility to get out of them.
Hmm.
We added some of those to any events where we know that there's a person who needs them, but we could add them to any event. And then having little tables around for folks who can, so that they can put their things on mobile tables,
Yeah.
individual tables. At High Holidays, we've got a couple of like TV table trays that we can move around to fit people
Mhm.
and their
Hmm.
needs.
Yeah. And there's just so many things that are free changes you can make.
Hmm.
There are the big changes. There's get a new bathroom, put new doors in, all of that too. But
Yeah.
it's the free, simple changes that there's no excuse not to be like integrating in some way.
I would say spend time talking to them. It's not spending money, it's just spend time.
Hmm.
Those
Yeah.
shifts. And does anybody want to bring up anything else before we kind of wrap up here? I know a couple folks are going to see a play. We've got a heart out for some.
I know in terms of examples, I think the one I gave before, Germantown Jewish Centers, is, one of the best for me because it's accessible to get into the building, but the fact that they actually removed the front rows and brought everything down from the Bima, so that anybody can get there, really, and also makes it was the Bima was a high stage, like it was sort of, separate. So it really makes more of a community feel. It's not always possible to do that. Or even, I work at one of the places that probably is one of the least accessible places in the world because Lehigh University is built on the side of a mountain, and
Oh,
all of the buildings have now the more recent buildings are all accessible. Our building, the Jewish Student Center, unfortunately, we were looking into putting in a ramp, which we might still do, but then we realized even if we put in a ramp and a more accessible staircase, there's no accessible bathroom on the first floor, and it's between the kitchen and a fire and a chimney. So it probably is doable in some way, but it would also be an extreme expense, which we can't afford right now. And the other reality is, I don't think anybody with a disability, a physical disability, and in wheelchairs would actually come to Lehigh University. So I'm always kind of surprised there hasn't been a lawsuit yet, but don't tell them I said that. But
Well,
when it was built, that wasn't something that was in people's minds. So, you do your best, but sometimes things just get in the way, and there are obstacles. So having things, having activities elsewhere on campus where people can have access,
Yeah.
when possible.
Yeah, Steve, like one of the things that we did was switching the bathrooms. The bathroom in CBS that's accessible is only the female bathroom for some reason,
Right,
or it's the
not the male
females
bathroom.
more accessible. So we just label
right,
it as all gender handicap accessible bathroom. And therefore anybody
right.
who needs that better setup has that better setup.
And
But it's
the
still
other
not
thing, though, is
good enough.
sometimes, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Good enough, yeah.
It's still not good enough.
It's
Go
still on.
ahead, Steve.
Sometimes the intention is good, but it doesn't help. Like when we remodeled the basement in our building, we put a bathroom in the basement because it's a game room down there. It had to be ADA compliant, but there's no way someone in a wheelchair could get into that basement because of the stairs to get. But maybe someday we'll be able to figure out a way to do that. So at least the bathroom is there. But uh,
But
so the intention was good, but it's not really making a difference right now.
I will say, like, there is still people who may be able to use the stairs, and it's not for everyone, but they will
Right.
still use the handicap bathroom. So I do understand. I mean,
Yeah.
like one of those where it's you know,
Hmm.
people you need to find a way to get people down the stairs who need that, but then there are
Yeah.
people. And I will say, like one of the things that I notice and in general, and this is actually something I've talked to my job about, having a handicap bathroom or an accessible bathroom, just having a bigger bathroom stall does not make it accessible. And like when you still have like the hooks up here and like here's the toilet, and if you actually need to be able to reach like tools from a bag or something like that. And so I still think it's like, there's the intent of, you want to do well, but
Hmm.
then it's also like the intent isn't always like, or the effort isn't always good enough. Like I appreciate progress, but
Hmm.
and I will say, I think we've come a long way. And from
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm putting my business out there. I was diagnosed with Crohn's also when I was 12, and I'm from the Chicagoland area originally. My rabbi tried to cancel my bat mitzvah. Um, and because I was so sick, because I had missed Hebrew school and like, all these reasons. And I think that, 30 years ago to now, and just
Hmm.
thinking about my own personal experiences, we have come a long way.
Yeah.
I do appreciate, religious leaders that are taking more time and effort to educate and, provide that inclusive environment.
There was
Yeah.
one of the foundational kind of things about our community was a general commitment to educate all children.
Mm.
Hmm.
Anyone can be bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah. It's so it's kind of been a thing for us all along. And so it's in our community, we happen to have a lot of people who are close enough to someone with a disability where we get it. We get more exposure to needs and changes in accommodations and disabilities in general. So it's we try and be a place where anybody can walk in as you are. And
That's amazing. I just also wanted to say I'm so happy that I found this, and I did not find this on my own. My mom gets the emails from My Jewish Learning, and she lives in Chicago. I live in the Washington D.C. area now. and she forwarded it to me and, was like, I know that this is what you're passionate about. So I'm really, really thankful that, she sent the email from My Jewish Learning and I was able to find this and join today.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, we tried to open up our education program broadly during pandemic, and as Joey was just saying in the chat, Joey lives states away from us, but is on our board of directors and has been for basically since he converted. So you get dipped, you're on the board.
I
So
love it.
the yeah, once we get our teeth in people, we don't let them go. So,
Yeah.
and Joey found us just through a random class on the hub and
Wow.
with My Jewish Learning.
Mhm.
And that was, yeah, that was long
Love
ago.
it.
So it's anybody is welcome to. I'm going to pop up. I have one more slide, and this will tell you there's a follow-up email coming that's going to have links we mentioned, a couple other things, a copy of these slides, and there is a copy of a text-only version for anybody who's using a screen reader or simply hates this font. This is open dyslexic font. It's made to be easier read for people with dyslexia, and I don't have that, but I just still find it the most easiest to read for my eyes. So I have other vision problems, but yeah. So if you like what we're doing, you can consider supporting our efforts. But in general, you can check out our website. We are amhaskalah.org. We Zoom everything. You want to hop into a Friday night service,
Mhm.
a class. We do classes every month. We do clubs almost every week, and we're always on Zoom. So if anybody wants to reach out at any time, I got links for you. You can come
Deb
on.
and Deb and Lynn, feel free to join us in any way, shape, or form. Not everything is going to appeal to everybody, and we totally know that. But many of the things we do try to appeal to a wide variety of folks, and we love having folks join us from all over the world. So during pandemic, our rabbi was in Germany while we were in the United States, and we've kept that movement afoot.
Yeah.
So we are here and everywhere.
Mhm.
I love it.
So thank you to all of us, everybody for joining today. This is a great conversation. The chat's been booming. I love this. Susan, it's 2:25. You have a hard out of
No,
2:30.
no, I'm not going. This
Oh,
is
okay,
one
gotcha.
month to me.
Just
This is
checking.
more important
Okay.
to me.
It's
And
so cold out.
I'm glad your mom made it here.
Among
Hi, Sandy.
other things, as a person with a challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah, Susan had her booklets in that she posted about, and we should definitely share those.
I'll add those to the email. Thank you. Susan, send me
Mhm.
the latest versions. I'll tack them on. And
Thank you.
that's
I didn't want it to all be about me, but I felt weird saying anything.
well, no, you've got the
Yeah.
resources. You've been working on disability rights for how many years? So
Mhm.
awesome.
Whatever.
And I'll stop sharing and I'm gonna turn off our recording. Oh, no, it looks like it may be never recorded, but we'll figure that out later. Either way, this
Oh,
was
really?
No,
um
No, it's
it's on my
recording.
end. It's recording.
It says
that's
recording.
great because I've got it's saying giving me a record button. Ah, there it is. Stop. Whew. That was a little heart
Yeah.
attack. Little heart attack right there. Okay, there we go. Now we'll
I
stop it.